Right, this is called The Revenant. Ha ha, laughed the photo in a black and white voice, with the very ghost of me gazing at the future I had become. It was hard to accept that this young scallywag was someone I used to be. Indeed, he is a stranger to the me of now. Find it difficult to get back into his head. He was eager to talk, but I wasn't, returning to the book he had fallen out of after he had been lost for years.
Oh. But this is called The Collector. Interviewer: do you remember how it began? I suppose she had about 50 when we decided to speak to her about the suffocating miasma, the slipperiness underfoot, the hard stares of the neighbours, the cost of food and the funerals. When she brought the first one home, we pretended not to notice. We edged around it, avoiding its protuberances, its eye. She watched us sidestep and dodge. Did you note the date, the season? It was a time of year when the sun was red, the light obscured. Why didn't you say something to her then? We waited for her to get bored. Even when she installed it in the spare room and called in a handyman to fit a lock on the door, we just told each other, at least we don't have to worry about it running off. We'd almost forgotten what it looked like by the time she brought in the second. By then the spare room was loud with bumpings, and a strange vapour fumed through the new keyhole. We tried to ignore the second too. Did it look like the first? Was it hairy? Did it have scales or spots? Was it naked? It looked to us as if it was invisible, but bigger, denser, much more smelly than the first one. I couldn't help saying I preferred the first one, which gave the game away and made her sulk a bit. She bundled it in with the first one, and there were screamings and scrapings. The smell of powerful cologne tended to put us off our dinners until we got accustomed to it. By the time she brought home the third, we realised she had the foundation of a collection. Now there would be no stopping her. The wall next door to the door of the spare room turned an ochreous green. We tried not to imagine the state of the wall inside the spare room. So, where did she keep the third one? Did she put it in the attic? Did she tether it to the table leg? No, the third was a lot smaller. She kept it in her pocket. She would stand as if listening to some faraway voice, and she'd knead it in her fingers until it wheezed. It was very asthmatic. It was a relief when she showed us the fourth, which was more self-sufficient and found a roost above the cooker hood. It belched and occasionally roared, but otherwise it was quite easy to ignore. Didn't you reason with her? Didn't you cite moral laws, political ethics, economic theory, legal precedents, rules of thumb, psychological hypotheses, vis-a-vis and apropos the quid pro quo? We did, though. We plugged up all the drains with brown paper, and we pointed out that her mother wouldn't approve. We told her that mummifying and repatriation could be viable options, and suggested applying for grants from the appropriate agencies. And recycling? Did you mention recycling? Of course not. The whole situation was beyond the capabilities of Surrey County Council sanitary facilities. So, what did you do after that? We just moved out.
Whenever I asked my uncle, when did that happen, Michael, he'd always say, oh, that was a granny ago. So I got used to a granny being a timepiece.
Yeah.
So this is called Granny Shocks the Grandchildren. And her husband died and they're all over. They're 13, 14. They're bored stiff having to be with this old woman and be on their best behaviour. And then one of them found this picture of a 60s chick, and they said, "Wow, who's she, Granny?" And she said, "That's me." So Granny shocks her grandchildren. Me, I always wore a yellow pinafore dress, displaying my what should not be seen, or a Sergeant Pepper's jacket serving as a dress, showing off buttocks and knickers to great effect. Moved from squat to squat, lived on hash and Matthew's rosé. Sex was just there. I had loads of lads had me. Music and sex, the twin gods. Forget I wanna hold your hand. We were Stones fans, man. Sang Let's Spend the Night Together. I wanted to be Juliet Greco. Reread the story of the Sad's 120 Days of Sodom. Morals? Yeah, whatever. We were all of us always trying to find ourselves or escape from ourselves. Grandad was mad, bad and gorgeous to know, like straying off the path into the forest of a fairy story, a sexy, scary beast, my very own big bad wolf, an kind of man. Eat me, I'd yell at him. Sex was that what cheered up those forever endless rainy British afternoons.
This is a sort of serious one. I wrote this during COVID, when I became addicted to my garden and I got delusions of grandeur. This is called Playing God. My garden hovers in a space beyond its narrow boundaries. Outside my garden, the illogical God, who admits to no precursor, created an eternal rat race. But in my garden, I am a god. In my garden, I create order, allow chaos where space permits indulgence, cut short arrogant, greedy lives, but reward, nurture, support according to my godlike whim in my garden. In my garden, time wears an erratic face. Unfurling buds mark weeks. Seedling thrusts measure days. In the dead of winter, there is no time, and space is replaced by plans and dreams. In the dead season, there's fear. Virtual invaders crowd against the boundaries of my garden. I know I am a finite, indefinite God, not the omnipotent one. One day, my garden will be gone.